Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, Haiti is in freefall. So why is the Dominican Republic deporting people there?
The Dominican Republic is deporting thousands of people across the border to Haiti, even as gangs there tighten their grip and the crisis worsens.
What does the DR's crackdown on Haitian migrants reveal about the story of two neighbors? I'm Manuel Rapalo, and this is The Take.
Manny, my name is Natasha Del Toro. I'm an investigative correspondent and podcast host for Al Jazeera and other outlets, and I know exactly where you're sitting right now.
Natasha, award-winning international journalist, fellow guest host of The Take. Welcome to the show. It's nice to have you on the other side of the mic. Let's start with the big picture here, the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. These are two countries that share an island. One of these countries has been the victim of a spiral of chaos and uncertainty for years.
Armed groups in Haiti have made significant gains, a UN-backed mission, and the police unable to stop them. There seems to be no control over the supply of guns, despite a United Nations arms embargo imposed 3 years ago.
So your film, Nowhere to Belong, which was produced by Al Jazeera Fault Lines, sets out to tell the story of how the Dominicans are responding here. The film starts with you on the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. What did you see?
So yeah, Manny, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's interesting to be on the other side of the mic. It gives me a little bit of sympathy for some of our guests. This film, so we were in Haiti in February, and one of the reasons that we decided to make this documentary right now is because the president of the Dominican Republic, Luis Abinader, who is a close ally of President Donald Trump, by the way, announced a very aggressive mass deportation policy in October of 2024. And the goal of this policy was to deport up to 10,000 Haitians every week back to Haiti. And as you know, Haiti is in the midst of a severe political and economic crisis, which is one of the reasons why there's so many Haitian migrants that are currently streaming across the border. So that is where we start our story, at a border crossing near a town in Haiti called Belladere. This border crossing it's an incredibly chaotic place.
So this is a scene that happens every single day here in this border town with Haiti. Hundreds of men, women, and children are being rounded up in the Dominican Republic and dropped off.
It's actually kind of hard to describe, but there are people everywhere, there's animals, there are trucks, it's very muddy, it's hot, and there are no car lanes, there's no order. I've often said that in Haiti, there's a million ways to die because there's no order. So it's a pretty dangerous place. We witnessed busloads of migrants getting dropped off right there at the border. Hundreds every single day. We saw some people that had their children with them. We saw some that were carrying infants. There were some people that had no shoes on their feet because whenever they were arrested, they lost their shoes. So they were barefoot. They had no money. They had no way to contact loved ones in the Dominican Republic.
And these are people that, for lack of a better term, have been rounded up for deportation. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? Because in many cases from the film, we can see that some of these detentions can be kind of violent.
Oh my gosh, yes. When we witnessed some of this, we went on a raid and we saw how people were being grabbed on their way to work. One woman was going to the hospital to try to get an appointment, and even then, you see people being grabbed out of their cars. They start running. Agents tackle them. That's violent. But beyond that, we heard stories of people. There was an 18-year-old who was shot and just sort of left on the side of the road. There was a video of agents running after. We see people like trying to escape from their windows, running on corrugated roofs with agents chasing after them. Like they're being they're being hunted, right? As if they're criminals. One guy you see gets pushed off of the roof. We don't know what ended up happening to him. But yes, these arrests can be incredibly violent. And that's just the start of it, because once they're arrested, they're thrown into a paddy wagon that's very crowded, that smells very bad, it's very dirty. And then they're taken to a detention center where they are, I guess, processed and held for days.
It smells really bad. People urinate there, do all their business. The food tastes bad, so I didn't eat.
I mean, this detention center has also been cited for major human rights concerns. And I mean, like I said, that's just the start of it. That's before they're even taken across the border to a country that is in the midst of a humanitarian crisis.
And let's talk a little bit about what's going on, because you already mentioned this policy that's been put in place that's essentially ramping up deportations. But in just these first few months of this year, nearly 150,000 people, is that correct, were sent to Haiti? The question is, why now? What is behind this surge that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, and I think even in the years leading up to this, there's been a very aggressive campaign to deport people. But this latest campaign of deporting up to 10,000 people a week, the reason for that is really because, as we've been saying, there's this humanitarian crisis that's happening in Haiti. The country has no president. In 2021, the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, was assassinated. And since then, there's been virtually no functioning government on the island, which has created a power vacuum. And now the capital is overrun by armed gangs. I think they control most of the city by this point, and gang violence is sort of starting to spread out into the rest of the country. Gangs are going into neighborhoods, they're burning them down, they're killing people. Sexual violence, rates of sexual violence and rape against women and children has skyrocketed. I mean, these are really difficult conditions. Plus, there's just the astronomical poverty rates. Haiti's a country of about 10 million people, and about 5 million people there, about half the population, suffer from extreme food insecurity. So all of these conditions are why you see Haitians streaming across the border, in essence, to try to survive right now.
Natasha, there's another aspect of the film that I found really interesting. You touch on a very important point, which is this policy of birthright citizenship, which was ended a while back, but it's a policy that's also been applied retroactively. So there's an entire generation of Haitians born in the Dominican Republic that are essentially stateless. What happens to people in these cases?
In 2010, there was a constitutional amendment in the Dominican Republic that redefined citizenship to exclude the children who were born in the Dominican Republic to undocumented Haitian parents. And then a few years later, they made that law retroactive to 1929. So what happens is it leaves tens of thousands of people potentially stateless. Those individuals don't have access to basic services or human rights. I mean, they cannot vote. They can't apply for higher education. They don't have a lot of the same rights as individuals there. And so they're left in this kind of legal limbo as a result of this. And it's, by the way, this is also the same policy that Donald Trump is starting to push for in the United States.
If somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
I wasn't going to say anything, but it does remind me of a roadmap for what the Trump administration would want.
Yes.
Natasha, I think, you're getting at something really important here, which is these very vulnerable groups living in these precarious circumstances, and now they're also faced with the possibility of being deported to Haiti, in some of these cases to a country they've never been to, that speaks a language that they don't speak. You've met a few people in this film that meet that criteria of vulnerable people. breastfeeding mothers, pregnant women. Are there any stories that didn't make it into the film that were unfortunately maybe left on the cutting room floor?
Well, Manny, the answer is yes. I met so many people whose stories have lingered with me. Obviously, we had the story of Maria, who was a 16-year-old girl who had never been to Haiti. She was born in the Dominican Republic to Haitian parents who were undocumented, who had lived there for 30 years, mind you, who worked, who were productive citizens, but they just didn't have their documentation. But Maria had never been to Haiti. She didn't speak the language, and she was deeply traumatized by what happened to her.
When I asked them where I was, and they told me I was in Haiti, I almost went crazy. I didn't know what I was going to do, alone, without my dad by my side.
But we did feature her in the film. There were other stories, though, that we didn't get to mention that have really haunted me. There's a refugee center across the border where a lot of these folks would end up. There was a guy that I met named Bob, and Bob was in his 20s, and he had been sitting there in this yard for weeks, for months, just sort of looking off into space despondently. He was estranged from his family. The sweetest guy, I should say. He was an artist. He was telling me all about how much he loved gardening, like a sensitive soul, sitting there. He had no food. He had no water. He had no money. He had been bathing in a river, in a dirty river, as many people do, and sometimes sleeping outside. This is a guy he had bipolar disorder, and he wasn't being medicated. So how does someone like that survive in a situation where there is the levels of violence that currently exist in Haiti? I mean, there were no options for him, and I think about him, and I wanted to help him so badly, and I just didn't know what I could do, because Bob is just one of dozens, hundreds of people that are arriving at that shelter every day who are lost and have no place to go. And I wonder, I just think about him because I don't even know if he's alive right now.
And it's cases like these that you brought to the Dominican government. You did an interview with Foreign Minister Roberto Alvarez, who didn't love your questions.
A lot of the folks that we talk to are people who are here working. They've been here for generations. Should there be a place for them in the Dominican Republic?
Well, you're bringing up many different issues. Number one, you sound as if you were a human rights organization more than a journalist. Well, I'm just telling you.
I'm mentioning these cases because this is something I just freshly experienced, but there is credible reporting that this has been happening in a much more widespread way.
Credible reportings to you.
It's funny that he would say that because he worked in the field of human rights. So when he said that to me, it sounded like it was an insult. But if you look at his own career, he's been working in the human rights field for forever. I think, it's interesting. I think he may just be towing the line right now for the administration that he's working for. And I think he's probably between a rock and a hard place.
The point that the Dominican Republic or the government is trying to make here is that it's not the Dominican Republic's fault that the situation in Haiti is what it is. It's not their responsibility, or it shouldn't be their responsibility alone to deal with this problem.
I think that to ask the Dominican Republic to shoulder the Haitian problem is absolutely unfair, and we will not do it.
Right. And look, it is an incredibly complicated problem. He was saying the Dominican Republic is not an orphanage. He said it in a way that seemed very cold, considering that the people that are coming from Haiti are fleeing violence. So his attitude, while I understand and sympathize that shouldn't only be the Dominican Republic's problem, it really shouldn't. I think the international community should step up to try and address the issues that are happening in Haiti. But I mean, it's obvious that Haitian people are going to do what any people who are in crisis are going to do. They're going to seek safety. Our documentary is not to point the finger at the Dominican Republic and say it's your responsibility to fix this problem, but it is to show that this problem is occurring and that in the meantime, these people who are fleeing from violence are being drastically mistreated. While many of these people, they're good people who are really just trying to work and to survive.
More with Natasha after the break. So, Natasha, the Dominican Republic says that this is all about enforcing immigration laws, but there are moments in your film that depict something more going on. I'm thinking of a scene where one immigration officer is talking about how Haitians are identified.
The Haitian we can identify from afar. Just look at his physical features. Haitians mainly have small ears, small heads. Many of them use cream to whiten their skin, but their knuckles stay black.
This didn't start with people fleeing Haiti. There's a long history of Haitians being persecuted in the Dominican Republic. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about what you learned about how Haitians are seen in the DR?
It's so interesting when I was hearing this migration agent describe to me how he essentially racially profiles Haitians. I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking, I mean, he himself could be Haitian. He has very dark skin. And so I asked him what his roots were. And he said, oh, no, I'm not Haitian. I'm British and I'm Spanish. So, I mean, it just speaks to the way that Dominicans see themselves in opposition to Haiti, and these racial dynamics that are very complicated and that stretch back for a long time. You know, Haiti was colonized by the French. The Dominican Republic was colonized by the Spanish. And the DR has often emphasized like its European heritage, its the Catholic roots, and they've denied their African ancestry, which we know that like in Haiti, slaves there revolted and created a first Black republic. There were a staggering number of slaves that were brought to Haiti. So, those dynamics, those racial dynamics are very interesting. And if you spoke to people in the Dominican Republic, I don't think that they would consider themselves racist at all.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, Natasha. Is like, you met a lot of people in Dominican Republic. What are the attitudes from the average Dominican person about these policies?
Well, I was going to say there are light-skinned Haitians, there are light-skinned migrants. They are not the ones that are being affected by this policy. It is the darker-skinned Haitians. And the attitudes towards people, the attitudes that people have against Haitians, it's, again, interesting. I don't think your everyday, your common person is against Haitians. I mean, in general, I found Dominican people to be very kind. But it is a government policy. And even politically, there is no sort of viable left party in the Dominican Republic. So what you are seeing is this sort of right-wing nationalism emerge, and they are very much blaming the immigrant and blaming Haitians.
Despite that, the Dominican Republic relies on labor from Haitians for jobs that, by and large, most people in the Dominican Republic don't want to do. So what is the calculation being made here by the Dominican Republic?
You're right. Like the government themselves they were bringing Haitians over to work in sugarcane fields and agriculture for decades, which is another reason why there are Haitians who've been there for so long, who have families there, you know, who've raised their children there, because there was a policy by the government to bring them there. And now the government would be trying to expel some of these very same people. The only thing I could really come up with is that they're just trying to they're trying to address an illegal migration problem that is severe, but they're also, I think, trying to respond to this nationalist movement that has become very vocal in recent years in the Dominican Republic.
And your film has been out for a little while now. I'm pretty sure you've already been hearing from some of these folks in this nationalist movement. Can you talk a little bit about the reception that the film is already getting?
I have never in my 20-year career received this level of sort of vitriol, and like the comments are incredibly harsh. I think we've really struck a nerve. I mean, I don't think people in the Dominican Republic consider themselves racist. I don't think they consider themselves to, be engaging in a discriminatory practice. They see that they are just defending their sovereignty, their resources, against this flood of Haitians who are coming in. Again, we can definitely talk about that, but you cannot deny we didn't make anything up. What we filmed is what's happening. So these Dominicans who are coming at fault lines in the comments that are pretty intense, maybe they just don't want to really look at what the reality is of what is occurring and the ways in which people are being mistreated. And these are also things that have been documented. International human rights organizations have been raising red flags about this for a while now, but it has been interesting to read some of the comments by some of these very right-wing nationalist Dominican groups who don't really seem to care about the fate of Haitians, even though these two, whether they like it or not, are historically and culturally intertwined. And the big thing for me, and this is a bigger question, Manny, where is people's empathy? I think we are suffering in this world right now from a deep empathy gap. The Haitians that are coming over, again, you have to put yourself in people's shoes. They are in need. And again, not that it's the Dominican Republic's sole responsibility to shoulder the Haitian problem. I personally don't think it should be. But we do need to acknowledge that these people that are coming are desperate. They're fleeing violence. They're just trying to survive. And you always have to ask yourself, how would you want to be treated if you found yourself in that situation?
Natasha Del Toro, the film is Nowhere to Belong by Al Jazeera Fault Lines. You can find it on YouTube. Check it out. Natasha, thank you for being on the other side of the mic today.
Manny, thank you so much for having me.
And that's The Take. Now we want to hear from you. What stories do you want to see on the next show? Let us know in the comments below what you'd like us to cover. Your feedback helps shape future episodes, so don't be shy. See you tomorrow.